Well, welcome back to the program just before 10:15 on this Sunday morning. Listen to this. What you leave behind is not what is engraved in stone monument, but what is woven into the lives of others. And that's a quotation at the beginning of a testimony published in the papers a couple of weeks ago. We at the Belgroves Group of Companies can attest to this maxim, as our contributions and influence have positively shaped the landscape of Trinidad and Tobago and by extension the world for 131 years. Well, a number of things said in this here struck me as important to talk about the evolution of an enterprise, the evolution of business development over this period, 131 years. And to help us go through that for the time between now and 11 o'clock, Mr. Keith Belgrove, who's the managing director of this group of companies, known as the Belgroves Group of Companies. Good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, Andy. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago. It's my pleasure to be here with you this morning.
Yeah.
So we can chat funeral service a little bit.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, a lot of things, in here struck me, like I say, as moving and as historic in some cases. It talks about, people probably wouldn't know that your organization was the first to construct the wooden pyre, which is now synonymous with well, it used to be synonymous with Hindu burials, but it has become sort of national now, and a lot of people choose that way.
The wooden pyre is still pretty Hindu.
Yeah.
And the history of Belgroves is really a fantastic story that we tell every now and then, usually every fifth year, but since we missed it last year, we stuck it in at 131.
All right, well, let me, I'm going to see if we could start at the beginning and ask you, the lady named here Mary Jane Belgrove, she's described as a courageous and ambitious enslaved woman from Barbados. What was she to your great-grandmother or something?
Great.
Yeah.
So that Mary was born on a sugar plantation in St. Lucie, Barbados.
Yeah.
And the slave mistress, Jane Belgrave, was bedridden. So we we sort of suspect that they had a softer life because she was bedridden.
Yeah.
And because clearly she was very entrepreneurial in her attitude in coming to Trinidad. So she came to Trinidad around 1867 with 3 sons.
Yeah.
One went into the Gasparilla area, one went into the Penal area, and one stayed with her. And the one she started on St. James Street, 27 St. James Street, San Fernando.
Yeah.
So you can consider the drive that she had to make sure she can be successful in life. Because herself and this son who stayed with her, he was Joseph Belgrove. Together they built a business. They amassed a lot of property around San Fernando, Lengua, Princestown, and they grew from strength to strength. Many of the things that Joseph and then his son Archibald and then his son Van Dyke did and created and innovated in funeral service became the norms of the day in funeral service back at that time.
Yeah. And just to locate where we're talking about, where the story started. St. Lucie, that's the parish on the top of Barbados.
Yes.
Yeah.
Way up on top Barbados.
North Point is the last point up
I've
there.
gone to Barbados, and there are Belgroves there in Barbados, and there was even a Belgrave funeral home there in Barbados. But in speaking with them, they couldn't link and connect us to make sure we can find our family back there, because we must have family back there.
Certainly.
I hope somebody in Barbados listening and can connect us.
Yeah.
I'll go there tomorrow.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to let's go back, stay with the Barbados thing a little bit, because so when I was growing up, there was one Bajan family in my in my village. I'm from Los Bao in Trinidad, but as you begin to grow and people talking about West Indians in Trinidad and so on, there was a special place a lot of people used to put on Barbados and Barbadians. You talk about the thrifty and the hardworking, and what's your statement about that? And in the Caribbean, Barbados is seen as a signal kind of place because it is one of the countries that is looked at as small but progressive.
Yeah, progressive. In fact, very often when I go to Barbados, I'm a little embarrassed that I make some comparisons and see that how they manage, for instance, the junkyards along the road. There are a line of trees and the junkyard is hidden back there. But it had to be that these early Belgroves in there, they had to have an experience that gave them a fighting spirit for success. Because to have enough money to board passage, herself and 3 children, to Trinidad had to be something. Then to come to Trinidad, find a place to settle. I don't know, we have no record as to why she headed south to San Fernando. But inside there to start a business. We assumed that she was doing this as a slave. One of her functions would have been that on her slave. Our descriptions of her was a tall, strapping black woman and very dark. And she's buried in Paradise Cemetery in San Fernando. So that we had all her information. And as such, the strength that they brought out of Barbados is what started all of this. It had to have a driving power in her mind that she inculcated in her son Joseph to be able to have what is existing today in the same family 131 years later.
What is the importance of that for people listening and studying business development, business administration now? That's a legacy that ought to be celebrated.
It is a legacy. One of the key things that is inside there is the continuation in the family, the matter of education, to make sure that the young ones are involved in the business from their youth, and make sure that they are all educated along the lines. In this business, education is vital. We are dealing with people at the point of the saddest times of their life, at a key emotional state when things are all disrupted, so that how to deal with those families are essential. So the education and the involvement within the family business from youth is essential.
So what do you study in order to develop that kind of customer service and customer understanding to deal with people in these situations? What do you
As a qualified funeral director, I went to school in 1972 to 74 in New York, funeral directing school. At the time, you're qualified as a funeral director and an embalmer. Now that has been separated a little bit into 2 different degrees, as a funeral director and as an embalmer. But there we studied the full works. Psychology, because you need to understand the psychology of the business you're doing. You did anatomy just as if we were going into medicine. With physiology as well, just as if we were going into medicine.
What do you have to do anatomy and physiology?
We must understand the frame we are dealing with, because as embalmers, we have to work with this frame. We have to restore in cases of trauma or in emaciated cases. So we must understand the physiology and even physiognomy of the human body, because that restoration is key. We go on to do business practices. In embalming, we must do chemistry, pathology, microbiology. The qualifications put us almost on the same level with a GP when they walk out the door. The major difference was they went on to cure, we went on to embalming, and the chemistry of embalming. That is where we divided. At the beginning, we are in the same place right along. That's why I always feel we got to make this into a profession. Funeral service must become a profession.
Yeah, and then over the years, I came to find out that you sort of help provide services for other funeral agencies, Allen's and Armstrong's in Arima, and that kind. So you all work together to a point.
Yes, we have always assisted. In the early days, I know my father assisted and worked with Mr. Allens of Tunapuna. They were very good friends. Mr. Armour Sr. of Princess Town. And there was that relationship where we worked together. There was even there was a funeral home, Theodore's. In they were just a little couple months older than we were. They existed.
In Duke Street,
on Duke Street in Port of Spain. My father were very close with them. In fact, one of them were godfather to one of my elder brothers. So that relationship worked. In my era, we came along where we created the crematorium and we assisted everybody. Alliance in Arima, we were extremely good friends. We actually worked together on projects, but sadly it's not always that strong because it's a competitive business, aggressively competitive, and as such, you don't always bond as well as you need to do in a small island as Trinidad when it gets that aggressive.
Yeah, well, I tell you a personal example. I'd heard about that kind of, not necessarily proper aggressiveness. You know, I had an uncle who died in 2001, and I was the one looking at you know, the beginning of the processes. So I'd gone to identify the body in the mortuary in San Fernando, and there were these people hanging around out there. Some of them in shirt jacks, and there was a lady with a briefcase, and I was leaving the crematorium, the mortuary, and she approached me. She said, "How are you?" I said, "I'm okay." She said, "You have a dead?" I said, "Yes." And she began to offer me deals. And I said, "Well, you know, I'm from a village called Los Bajos, and it just so happens that there's a funeral agency there, and I'm coming from there."
Madison.
I said, "Well, you know, there's no way I could bring somebody." She's from Das, and I don't want to demonize them. And that's in Pinal. And I said, and she was pursuing me. I said, "No, I can't do that. You know, I have a funeral agency in my village, you know, but." And I get to realize that that's part of the aggressiveness and the competition that takes place.
Andy, I apologize on behalf of my profession. I am embarrassed to hear that, but that is real and alive today. There is a national standard done by Trinidad and Tobago Bureau of Standards, but it's voluntary, and maybe if we get a chance I'll explain why.
Yeah.
But the thing about this national standard is that it tells us basic minimum standards that each funeral home should adhere to. There are 3 funeral homes out of 54 funeral homes, and about another 19 new ones that came up that adhere to that. And some of the older funeral homes practice that ugly practice. We feel that it's a sacred right of every family to choose a funeral home of their own. We feel they should be allowed to explore the market and compare freely and fairly. There are funeral homes out there, they're in bed with the police. We have just received a complaint. The young lady, she and her aunt alone in the house. The aunt passes. She calls the police, as she should.
Yeah.
She has not yet called Belgroves, a particular funeral home, Guides Funeral Home, and I can call their name because it's a fact.
Yeah.
Turned up at their house. How do they know to turn up? In bed with the police officers. We have had those kind of complaints so regularly. We have situations where funeral homes say they're associated with Belgroves, and the people have gone to them. Then they walk in our funeral home saying, "Well, we're here to make arrangements." Arrangements for? Only to discover it's at another funeral home nearby across the street.
Yeah.
Because they say, "We know we're part of Belgroves," just to get the business. Now, if we say to that family, "No, take that honorary back," when we say honorary, we call our deceased people honor, because with the way we do the service, we're honoring their lives. So if we attempt to take that honorary back, they are now charged exorbitant fees to transfer back. So we say, you can manage your budget easier, you can stay where you are. I am sorry that this occurred. But the bottom line of it, even those exorbitant fees, how do they justify the fees? There's no way to justify the fees.
Yeah.
But it is punitive on the families to make sure they stay.
I see. Yeah, all right. I want to come to some of that because you talked about finding ways to what I would call humanize the profession. Major achievements, a steadfast advocate for licensing laws within industry and ethicality of the industry and setting benchmarks and so on. But before we go there, it seems that what is there early up? Who's Joseph? He would have been your grandfather.
Yes. Joseph would have been my great-grandfather.
Your great-grandfather, okay.
And Joseph was the son of Mary.
Of Mary, right.
And together, they're the two, as I said, who began this thing in real. Mary.
It's interesting, you know, my grandmother used to talk about when she gets exasperated, she used to say, "Oh Jesus, Mary and Joseph." So yeah, it just comes back to mind. Yeah. But you say credit him here with relocating the groups from its head office on that was on St. James Street.
Yes.
To Coffee Street, San Fernando. That was a strategic move to begin with.
Yeah.
Why so?
That we don't have records to tell us why.
Yeah.
However, as all funeral services in the early days, Joseph was into the wheelwright trade. He was also a cabinet maker, because the cabinet makers were also the undertakers of the day.
At that time.
Obvious.
Yeah.
So that is how funeral service evolved. It was usually a cabinet maker that the community will go to get a coffin.
To build a coffin.
And then I guess they made a choice of which was more lucrative.
Yeah.
But Mary did practice on 28th St. James Street. Joseph moved to 94 Coffee Street, San Fernando, and to where he traded. Even as a child, I remember Just, J-O-S, Just Belgrove Funeral Agency, August 15th, 1888.
Yeah.
I searched for that sign all over, but somewhere in the 60s when my father cleaned up, all that was discarded.
I see.
But the thing, so he operated there. My father took over that, well, Archibald is Joseph's son.
Yeah, okay.
And Archibald took over at that point, and Archibald had many sons, and my father being one, and Uncle Roy Belgrove was another, Eric Belgrove was another. Eric opened in Tunapuna, where the Hilo now stands.
Okay.
The railway used to pass right near there.
Okay.
Roy opened right next to the hospital in San Fernando, because long time, that's the source of business.
Yeah.
That's where you put,
Yeah.
location. So Roy went away in the war years when everybody migrated to America and all of that, and he sold his fledgling business to a gentleman called J.E. Guide.
Okay.
The beginning of that.
So that's
service.
where it started. So
Yes.
there was, okay.
So that and Eric closed, and he went off to the U.S. as well.
Yeah.
So that what we had then was Joseph, son Archibald, and or also called Van Dyke, because the names were repeated right through.
Yeah.
Even in my case, names are repeated coming right across the board.
Okay.
So to separate them, I will call my grandfather Van Dyke, the one before great-grandfather Archibald, great-great-grandfather Joseph, and
Yeah.
then on to Mary.
Okay.
So when it came down now to Archibald or Van Dyke was a single child, only child.
Yeah.
They had this large house built at the corner of Prince of Wales Street and St. James Street and Keith Street in San Fernando. And very large house. And in the back as a child, you know those Western horse-drawn carriages?
Yeah.
I used to see that there as a child. And but what Archibald did, or Van Dyke, I keep saying that so that we'll anchor them properly.
Yeah.
He liked to gamble. And much of the property and much of the dollars and even the great house became in trouble.
Wow.
And when all his children started to become adults now, they all branched out in their own. Who went off to Guyana? My uncle Sidney went off to the military, and he served in Guyana. And that's how everybody scattered.
Yeah.
My father, Lionel, stayed with the trade. So Roy sold out. Eric went away and closed and went away. And Lionel, my father, stayed with the business. And he built from there. He moved from 94 Coffee Street. I was born there, you know.
Yeah.
And they say, and this is, my parents told me this, my bassinet was a coffin.
Yeah.
Because if they're working right there,
Yeah.
my father had a haberdashery store and a funeral home.
Yeah.
And they're working there, building coffins, etc. My mother ran the haberdashery store, Cleo, and my father building coffins to prepare and stuff like that. How best to control a miserable little boy by putting him in a coffin?
What do you think about when you think about that? What comes to your mind?
So it's natural. Look where I am today. So I was born there at 94 Coffee Street, just opposite the Padman and Coffee Street. It's now an empty lot. And in 1962, he purchased 107 Coffee Street, and then a couple of years later, he purchased 109 Coffee Street, and from there the thing grew. He bought a Chevrolet vehicle of the day. He had this Super Snite. Super Snite was an older car, a large car.
Yeah.
And he went to a garage called Swanson, and they cut up the car and built a hearse, the first motorized hearse in San Fernando.
Yeah.
So his business grew from there, and then he bought this Chevrolet through Neil and Massey. He imported it through them, and
that was the car of the day.
the car of the day. Business took off. PA 515. I have pictures of that, and the drivers and all of that, and business took off. So that is how we grew. My father was a tickler for quality. He will prefer the service to go late. There must not be a speck on that casket. Your attire must be perfect. The vehicle must be clean. The person must look so right. So we grew with that being inculcated into us. Quality for service. So as a little boy coming up, that was natural to us as we made the change into it. So bit by bit, the business grew stronger and stronger. And back then, in about 1962 as well, my elder brother, Reynold Belgrove, was sent off to first Barbados, where there was an embalming school.
Yeah.
When Reynold came home from that, he wasn't satisfied with what he learned there, and he went off to New York, where he went to school. Reynold got married in New York. He didn't come back until much later. He came for a while. Then in 1974...
was he engaged in the business there in New
Oh,
York?
yes. In fact, he embalmed some well-known people, movie stars. He worked at a place in Harlem. So, and you know, that was like a mecca for the black stars.
It was.
Yeah. So he has embalmed some big
black
names.
People generally, Harlem is a special place for black people in the United States.
That's right.
Yeah.
So that, and so my brother Carlyle joined the business, my eldest brother, then my other brother Edmund also joined. Edmund, he focused in building the caskets and stuff. Carlyle we opened a place in Chagonas, and Carlyle was made manager of that. And that lasted a few years, but then Carlyle chose to migrate, and it was closed. After it was closed, Monsegue's funeral home opened there.
Yes.
So those are the histories
That's
of how
how the thing developed. Talk about what led to the construction of the first wooden pyre. How did that come along?
Yes, we started talking about that. Back then in the 60s and earlier, it was against the law for the Hindu community to cremate on land. So, for those who felt that they wanted to practice their faith, they went just off the Mosquito Creek and just off in Couva, Cali Bay. There were a couple of rocks there, and as such, you're not cremating on land, you're cremating out at sea. So we will cremate out there. It was a messy thing. You needed to plan for low tide. And on top of that, we used old tires in those days. Oh, no. After those tires are burnt, there are tons and tons of burnt wire and a messy thing, the black smoke, and if the wind changed and came in land, everybody scattered because you're being choked and all that. My father then, there was a university, I forgot which university right now, that was doing some studies in Trinidad about how we called our culture around death. And of course they came to the funeral home. He purchased from them how cremations were done in India. His gardener, Sukdev Sharma, he set up to start building the first wooden pyres on Mosquito Creek. And that was the beginning of it. At those days, we used to also rent a casket, but embalming wasn't as common in those days. I hadn't gone off to school as yet. And so we'd rent a casket, but then it wasn't sanitary to continue that business. So my uncle Sidney, who had now come out of Guyana and back into and joined my father to support him, created that open coffin that we use today for the Hindus or the Muslims. For the Hindus, we call it a cremation receptacle. For the Muslims, we call it a taboot. Because the Muslims had a traditional taboot. But because of the way it was reused, it was not sanitary. So we created this unit that made it far more sanitary. And both cultures use those things today.
And that's interesting because I was reading some aspect of Jamaican history months ago by a renowned Jamaican historian called Dr. Vereen Shepherd, and talking about some of the social progress. She talked about the difficulties the authorities had with cremations in Jamaica, and I was saying, well, I mean, we invented that, so it was an issue for them. But talking now, you're saying that there was an issue as to how to.
There was an issue in Trinidad. Even to get a permit to cremate back in those days, it was a very onerous system. You had to go to a GP and all sort of stuff. And my father joined many voices in the Hindu community, writing letters with recommendations as to how to simplify. So I will take the assumption and the honor on behalf of him for his name in playing that role for when, I forgot which year, the Cremation Act was amended, I think around 1950 or something like that. It was amended where it was now allowed, that cremation could now be allowed. And so that we were now cremating on land, Caroni, Badisagan Mirage, and then down in Mosquito Creek, Shanty Shoreham, and there are about 5 locations around the country now.
Right.
In the early days, there was one somewhere down Cedrus Way as well. And that died out. So that's the heritage, that's the roots of how our culture developed here in Trinidad, and how as a people we molded and blended together to create what is today.
Let's talk about this paragraph here, just after the construction of the first wooden pier. A visionary at heart with a natural talent for the industry, the BGC's current CEO, Keith Belgrove,
Who's that again?
transformed the industry by fusing the old traditions with the cutting-edge technology. He made certain that bereaved families not only felt comforted but alleviated the stress typically associated with memorial service arrangements. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes. Well, that's quite a story and quite an accomplishment. I like to say everything that is practiced in funeral service, and there's not an idle boast, it is a fact and it's not a boast. And we must recognize the fact where it's fact. Everything that's practiced in funeral service in this country and the wider Caribbean today started straight out of Belgroves by the innovative thinking of my ancestors, God bless their souls, as well as into my era as well. So we were cremating in the creek. Dr. Eric Williams was cremated. And of course, even before he was cremated, we were recommending for a crematorium, and at the time we wanted to put it in Rudal Cemetery in San Fernando. And then the Port of Spain Corporation came up and said they were considering one. We gave them advice, we gave them guidance. They took none.
Typical of governments.
They created what was done. They imported an English machine, which is a smaller machine. But here in Trinidad, we use larger caskets, etc. You needed an American machine. And then they wrote to the funeral profession and say, you need to bring smaller caskets. But that's the lie.
Yeah.
So we also decided that we will establish a crematorium, modern crematorium to serve, because the country was running out of usable cemetery space. And as such, that application started. It took 21 years from initial application to approval.
Wow.
There's lots of politics behind that. But when we got that approval, it was 1999, and we established the first modern crematorium in Trinidad and Tobago that's privately owned. We put it in our facility right on Coffee Street, San Fernando. It was like the people of San Fernando was getting a personal gift. The town was excited, and people were happy for that. The government broadcasting unit came and recorded the thing because it was history in the making.
Yeah.
And that record stands there up to today. So that's how that
Your
went.
copy of it, the recording?
I should really try to get that. We recorded it ourselves as well, but we should get the one from GBU.
The GBU.
Yeah.
Good old GBU.
Yeah. So we could probably check that. I know a couple of people working there.
Still here.
Even around that time, I had gone away, and when I came back, I learned we had the service for a friend's husband a couple of weeks back, and I got on the phone and called her. And she said, Keith, oh God, how did you know I needed somebody to talk to? That was the birth of bereavement counseling in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yeah.
We employed someone who was able to support. We took them off to the US to be trained in an organization we belong to, an international organization. And that was the birth of bereavement counseling. Because we recognize, after we said goodbye, whether it's at the crematorium or at the cemetery, that is when the need for funeral service really starts, because the pain of separation, sometimes it's a breadwinner and all of that, or sometimes a young parent with young children. So bereavement counseling was a necessary adjunct to the services we offered, because we weren't in it for dollars, we were in it to serve.
Yeah.
It's a calling to serve.
You think it's made any easier now? When I was growing up, after the burial, it was a very sad time. But I watched the progression of the parties that take place
We changed
after the
that.
burial, the cremation,
Yes.
and people come by, and it's a big,
We changed
happening. But sometimes I wonder, well, after that, so that everybody gathers after the burial, the cremation, you have food and drink, and what happens next day with the
well-
people who are left there, because the house comes back to one or two.
What we thought, and again, out of our international involvement, we thought we would first, is the funeral really supposed to be so morbid? Every one of our spiritual teachings tell us of a better place. If I call it from the Bible, to be absent in the body is to be present with the Lord. Then shouldn't we be happy? Shouldn't we celebrate? I know, yes, some sad trauma and things like that. Some are sad, and young child and all of that. But the bottom line, so we started to say to people, let's celebrate. Let's celebrate who John was, Mary was, and honor their role in your family, the love you shared in the community, and we will listen to them and build a story and say, you know what we can do for this funeral? And that was the birth of it.
Yeah.
What it did, it made the process of the funeral lighter. It allowed families to walk away lighter and begin the seriousness of grief in a lighter frame of mind. We ran every third Saturday. We invited our clients of last month and the same time last year back in a session that we did. That was deliberate. We wanted to show the current families the experience of those a year ago, how they are beginning to survive through the adjustment that a death brings. And that is what we were creating, because we were serving the need, the true need. All the funeral and all that is not the true need, The true need is supporting that grief and putting the family on a step for going forward.
But you think there's still people who would look at the FET that took out, say, Ken Professor Fillmore or what's his name?
Yes.
The Road March King.
Okay.
Shadow, right?
right.
You think that there's still people who would look at that and say, well, that's not a funeral. I mean, that's
No
a party.
longer. No longer. I'm happy to say we made the change. Those are who they were. So we have to recognize their input through the culture that they brought to us, through the innovations they brought to us. So whether it was into art, whether it was into education, whether it was into social services, recognize that, because the family feels better by it. And the families tell us that, they said, you made it so light.
Yeah, we lifted a great load.
And it prepares them for for the inevitable that we know they will face into the months coming.
Okay, let's talk about the development of the Funeral Directors Association in Trinidad and Tobago.
That was, I came home from school, a fresh young boy, 24 years old, and of course, I'm exposed to that, where I went to school in New York and to an organization I joined even at that point, National Funeral Directors Association of the U.S. They say national, but I keep telling them they have to change the name to international, because they have so many international members.
Yeah.
So I immediately started to say to the fellow funeral directors, I went first to my father's friends, Mr. Patrick Allen of Tundapuna. I went on to Mr. Armour. By that time, the senior Armour had died. I went on to Mr. Meg Batu of Clark and Batu, and we said, why don't we start an association? And that was the birth. The very first meeting was held at Clark and Batu, Port of Spain on Tragridge Road.
Yeah.
And I was elected the chairperson and the president of the association back then. I always remember Mr. Leonard Armstrong of Armstrong's Funeral Home, Observatory Street. He said to me after the meeting, we served quicks and sardines, quicks and sardines. And he came to me and he said, boy, you might remember hard times, I say, how come? You say, when things were so hard, it was quicks and sardines every day.
Yeah.
But that is how we started. And it was, at that time, it was just 15 to 20 funeral homes in Trinidad and Tobago, you know. And we bonded together as a group because although we were all competing in the same business, I asked myself, was it truly, well, a lot of us see it as competition, but I asked myself, is it truly competition? Or is it a drive to find new ways to better serve? And we drank a hell of a lot of alcohol. And how best to bond with people who didn't trust one another. We were in one another's houses, dancing away, hugging up one another's wives, and we had a great time together as an association. And then we pointed out, you know, we need some regulations for our business. And we started making the application. Because we saw ourselves as protectors of public health, and that's a whole thing by itself, we went to the Ministry of Health at the time and made the application there. It went along, and we had like many meetings. We met with the Law Review Commission, where they helped us to draft a funeral homes bill. It moved on. Mr. Manning.
A funeral homes bill?
There was a funeral home bill. And in fact, I don't think it ever truly disappeared. So let me say there is a funeral home bill.
What it deals with?
It dealt with the way funeral homes should operate, their minimum standards that you must have in a funeral home, whether you can cook food in the funeral home, how you must treat with the dead bodies you work with, or we call them honorees, that you work with, and it dealt with your waste. And plus the ethical side of the business that is so sadly lacking.
The disposal of the waste.
Yeah, the disposal of waste from funeral homes. So we had, and then it dealt with penalties and stuff like that. It dealt with the educational standards that were required to practice the art of funeral service.
Is it morbid to ask about what is the kind of waste that has to get disposed?
Well, in funeral service, firstly you come in with clothing. That clothing we used to return, but then with education, and remind me to tell you about death certificates in this country. With education, we understood the pathology of a human body at death, and we said, no, that must go for incineration. But not many of us incinerated, and we put it into the public garbage and out. When it reaches a dump, who is sorting what to take home? Because it's good clothes. Yeah. Right? It's even that, and that happens up to today. That's solid waste. There would be gauze and things like that, all solid waste. And there's some semi-solid waste, which not all funeral homes are properly located and properly. Today, it hits the surface drains. It hits the ravine right behind the building. Today, 2019.
So I guess what you're saying there is that there are still some of can I call them your colleagues in the business who are not playing by the rules, observing.
Absolutely no facilities. But we get to that.
Yeah.
Oh my God. How does time fly?
Exactly. I was just looking at it.
But the thing about it.
I thought the time that I was allotting for this was too much, but it's not
you
enough.
You need half this.
Yes.
The thing about it is that Mr. Manning took it to cabinet. It came back for a minor amendment. Elections came. Under Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj, we went through the Law Review Commission again, and we had some fines in there. He beefed up all the fines. He made some changes to it. And now we're ready to go on to Parliament. Election came. The next government didn't see the focus or the priority. They didn't have the time to put that priority on it. And the next government, and the next government. And here we are today in the same boat. We have the commitment of the Minister of Local Government and Rural, etc. We have the commitment of the Attorney General. Both the attorneys in those two ministries are too busy. We have the chairman of the regional corporations complaining. There is a whole lot happening. We just had Dr. Sheila Ramprasad commenting. The government needs to pay attention to the needs in funeral service.
And it doesn't help that both the Attorney General and the Minister of Local Government are San Fernandans. It doesn't help. That's the politics that is
they are committed. I think from that perspective, yes, they both gave the promise to do it. But the attorney in the AG's office simply said, Mr. Belgrove are well busy. And he made one draft because we had to redesign now, because in those days we were funeral home. Now we have funeral homes that own funeral homes that own crematoria, funeral homes that own cemetery. Right? So the whole thing had to be redesigned.
Yeah.
And we can't seem to get going,
all right,
as desperate as it is in this country.
We've stayed with that. Let's take a brief break and come back in a moment. Stay with us. We're talking with Mr. Keith Belgrove.
Power 102 FM Digital with the Power 102 app, social media and website. Power 102 FM Campaign 1441 for news, breaking news and exclusive content.
I could not understand. Serious charges have been made against Ms. McDonald. But I thought that once they accepted and I had advised the police to arrest her and now charge her, she would have been dismissed.
Power 102 FM Campaign 1441 for 24/7 access to exclusive interviews.
The announcement of the removal of Miss McDonald came as no surprise to anybody. However, the manner in which it was done shows the crisis in leadership and governance that we're facing.
Power 102 Digital app, social media, and Power 102 FM Campaign 1441 for your comments and questions.
We're in a failed state right now about the Marlene thing, and it has taken away from the headlines of murders that has taken place, and nobody's being caught.
Get in early on the next show. Share your comments, opinions, or suggestions for the team. We'll be using your contributions in our next program. Power 102 Digital with the Power 102 app, social media, and Power102FM.com. Power102FM.com. Power 102 FM Campaign 1441.
By public demand, Incredible India Expo behind KFC next to Front Station Laramine extends until August 26th. Get up to 50% off. Now enjoy Foodie Mondays. Join us for lunch or dinner or just a light snack and get 50% off food and drinks at any of our restaurants every Monday. Spend $1,000 or more and get a chance to spin to win up to $500 instantly. Join us for our bingo competition every Thursday at 4 p.m. and win up to $10,000 and gift vouchers. Incredible India Expo behind KFC next to Front Station Laramine. Now closing on Monday, August 26th.
Master Eric, Sundays from 4 to 6 p.m. on Power 102.
I'm Master Eric, inviting you to join me 4 to 6 p.m. on Sundays here on Power 102.1 to enhance your awareness of the spiritual realms and to find your pathways that are predestined for you. Become independent and not dependent, and find yourself and know thyself.
Master Eric, Sundays from 4 to 6 p.m. on Power 102, empowering you.
Westby's Supermarket, easy to fill your basket, prices to really make you pleased. Westby's has secure parking, spacious and comfort shopping.
Oasis Water 500 milliliters, 99 cents per bottle. Batuke's Guava Jam 411 grams, $9.99. Lipton Tea Bag 25s, $9.99. Fruta Apple 100% juice, 7 for $9.99. Barrack Pasta Fancy Cuts 400 grams, 5 packs for $19.99. Suppligent Strawberry and Vanilla 250 milliliters, 4 packs, $19.99.
In Westby Supermarket, the price is right.
Are the problems and destructive anxieties of today tearing you apart? If there was ever a time to readjust your priorities and refocus your vision, it's now. Join Pastor Wayne Sampson on the Vision of Hope devotional program every Monday from 5:30 to 6 a.m. right here on Power 102 FM. Jesus is the only one who can give you peace in the midst of today's storm.
Welcome back. This is Impact TNT. And this Sunday morning, we're continuing our discussion with Mr. Keith Belgrove, the man now behind the conglomerate that is known as the Belgroves Group of Companies. We're talking about the moves towards making this a better business, a safer business, and he was on the point about advocacy for licensing laws within the industry in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes, so that I want to make a call today, the Prime Minister. Mr. Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, we need priority for licensing laws for funeral service in Trinidad and Tobago. There are many crematoria existing now. We actually have a glut in the market for cremations. There are many funeral homes, if I say 54 funeral homes and about 19 other what we call suitcase traders. They don't have facilities, have no facilities, or less than acceptable facilities. So 54 plus 19.
So how do they operate, the suitcase traders?
Many of them have no businesses. They go to another funeral home and they put on St. Vincent Street and they purchase services there. I passed along that funeral home one day, what we call a shipping case, where somebody is shipped internationally.
Yeah.
On the pavement at the side of the building, and it sat there for about 10 days. What is going on?
Yeah.
There is desperate need for
in this modern time.
In this modern time, yes.
Yeah.
So where is their waste going? How is that waste treated before it hits the drains? You know? So there is serious need. The ethics that is required, business ethics that is required, I know that's difficult to regulate, but there will be standards that will be put in place under such regulations.
And that's where you talk about trying to force the ethicality of the industry,
yes,
setting benchmarks for quality standards.
Yes, allow people to choose on their own. Stop paying the police and doctors, and it is deep and ugly where these funeral homes practice. There are funeral homes that, for instance, let me stay with making this call.
Yeah.
Dr. Rowley.
One Keith to the other.
Yes, one Keith to the other. AG, we've been neighbors for a long time. Minister of local government, we've known each other for years. This is no favor to Keith. This is the country needs regulating for funeral service. Let's put priority on it. Let's go through cabinet. Let's go through parliament. Let's have a law in this term. Much work was done. It could be done. It only needs your commitment. We beg of you. You all know how to reach me. Dr. Rowley, I will WhatsApp to your phone. Please, we need your help.
Yeah, because these are things that people don't ordinarily understand and appreciate. You're talking about what is nearly, well, I want to use the term crisis because that Keith doesn't like to hear that. He says, but these are things that need to be addressed. I mean, can I mention what you said during the break about there's a direct connection between the movement of Ebola and the handling of the body?
Sierra Leone was running into some serious trouble, and neighboring states, serious trouble with Ebola. The problem of where it became so epidemic was the way the people there were practicing funeral service. When that was accidentally discovered and controlled, that's when they started to get a control for Ebola. We get one case in this country, the way we practice funeral service here, we have serious trouble. We will have serious trouble. So it must be regulated. We are not saying we're closing anybody.
Yeah.
I am saying minimum international basic standards must be put in place. Of course, a fair time to allow people to come up to scratch. Who choose not to, that's their business. Who choose to, great. The playing field will now be leveled to make sure, from a public health perspective, the country is protected.
And probably part of what may be driving what you describe as a suitcase trade is the cost for some people and for some families. So they can't afford a Belgroves or Allen's and so on. So they would take, as you say, the roadside vendor who comes and,
Let me put it this way. Quality cost. Even at a basic level, quality cost. You have to pay for that vehicle. You have to pay the workmen, and it is not a comfortable type job, so the workmen are well paid. You have to pay yourself. You have to buy the casket or coffin. You have to pay to prepare. All of that costs money. When it is social welfare, gives $7,000 to assist a needy family, and funeral homes in their competitive states say, I'll give you back $2,000, and they keep $5,000. What could they truly do?
What kind of service
to
could
put out into the public for our country with the $5,000? And I've only called some of the costs involved, right? Yeah. So we are in a dangerous place. On top of that now, social welfare called us in. What's going on? You have $7,000, but you're giving back some. On top of that, many of the people they promise it to, not getting it. Well, we said to social welfare, every time that happens, blacklist them. Don't give them those vouchers. We have another situation, police removals. Police removals is a term we use in our industry, where we assist the police where there was a homicide or sudden death or even deaths at home. There is a cycle that takes place where different funeral homes will act at different times. What will happen, as in the case I brought to you earlier, where the family called the police, another funeral home turn up.
Yeah.
If that funeral home is successful in removing, they will bill the police, and they will also bill the family. We designed with the Chief Magistrate Office a price list for that service. There are funeral homes with their own price list. There are funeral homes who use that price list in a way that they squeeze the judiciary and the prices that they pay. So we approached the former acting police commissioner, and we will approach this one because a fix must come. It must be properly handled. When we see how we do assist the police and we splashed internationally looking like some scavengers, there are standards. We met with CSI and we designed the professional standards for how this should be done.
You're talking about the United States, CSI crime scene investigation.
No, right up in at the end of the highway. I forgot the name of the place. I forgot the name of the officer as well. Crime scene investigation. We have one here, you know.
Yeah, well.
Yeah. So we designed with them the standards, but those standards are not kept today. So I don't know.
There's a lot of work going on related to the whole business of taking care of people in the last time I know that goes without notice.
And it goes without notice, and you wonder if it has any value because nobody practices it. We become toothless bulldogs because we have done all of this work, but nowhere there's a regulation to say, put this into the regulation, so you must now adhere. And then a governing body who will come to ensure those regulations. And we agree, put that under the regional corporations. But we will work with the regional corporations to make sure it works smoothly, to make sure that people toe the line.
Yeah. So let's try and end on a lighter note and a more positive note.
Before that, Dana, can I just plug one thing?
Go ahead.
Please. Families, you have the right to choose a funeral home. I know very often you're confused at the time when you learn of a death and you're exposed to these unethical touts at the hospitals and where else not. Forensic, Mount Hope, San Fernando General, especially San Fernando General where it's the worst, and forensic. Know that you have the right to choose. The people there are working on commissions. Each one they get a fee. So they are using you. Take time to check. Take time to choose on your own. Belgroves is Belgroves. We are associated with no one but Belgroves. We will continue to serve you. We will continue to design the future of funeral service to better serve you. Belgroves is the only name you should know.
All right.
Thank you for that.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, it's worth your time and energy. But just go out with, because you're involved in non-government, non-profit organizations. You're involved in some of those things.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that before we go. So this organization called the Hope for a Miracle Foundation, and is what's his name? Sterling Belgrove related to you?
Sterling is my cousin. We tell people we are brothers, but biologically we are cousins.
Yeah.
Hey, that's a powerhouse himself.
Yeah.
Huh? So he's right now in South Korea.
Yeah, the Rose Foundation.
The Rose Foundation, and we're doing some work with them to get some stuff up and running.
Yeah.
But again, coming out of our stance of supporting and care. The Hope of a Miracle Foundation assists children in need. And they have done some human work in saving children's lives, giving them a future. So we thought, okay, we will ask our clients to support us, and we take contributions from our clients and we put our bit into it and we donate back to the Hope of a Miracle. And this is an organization where 100% of donations are applied to the cases they assist. There was this little boy we were able to assist, and the surgery saved his life. We have since adopted him for his education into the future. And it's a powerful thing. That day when the boy came back from his surgery and all that, and we were having a little presentation in the funeral home, he was running around and making noise, and his mother tried to quiet him. And I was on the podium at the time, and I said, no. In fact, I'm talking about it. Forgive me if I cry for this. I said, let that child make all the noise he could. Because in a simple program like that, you give life.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
All right.
And we also support the seniors as well.
All right. So there's much, much more behind this business than meets the eye. You know.
It's a calling. It's a God-sent calling that allows us to serve our people in a meaningful way.
Right, and there are 5 companies associated with this group.
Family Legacy.
Yeah.
We create a fund for people so that in your working years you put aside that fund to be able to support when the funeral comes. And the history of that is, in my father's time, these people will put down money and they'll come and lay down the little $5 and $10.
Yeah.
So in the 80s, we created Family Legacy to be able to, and we have an insurance company that supports us with it. And as such, we allow people a fund for the funeral. And people, there is no financial product in this country that beats Family Legacy. Call us, buy it. Then there's cemetery management. We created the world-class green cemetery in Orange Grove. It looks like a lawn. It's the only one in Trinidad. And we don't dig dirt there. We created a system where we lift 2 feet of dirt on a concrete cover, and then we have this equipment and a fantastic garden service. All of that to serve the needs of our people as we honor those who serve them in their families. Caskets and funeral supplies. Yeah. It's just that name. And we export to the Caribbean and our own service here as well.
And Lifetime Promotions Limited.
We created passages whereby we put funeral notices on print, on radio, and on television. So people can see the pictures of and recognize and be able to call and give that family support. Because at this time, it's always important to call and touch base with the family. And family, friends, listeners, when you touch base, you're not going to criticize. You're not going to put them under additional pressure. Be a strong shoulder, a strong support, and just be there. Carry something. Now, weeks now, you go with your sticking out looking for food and drink. Where we gone as a people, you know? So carry something. Help them, support them. We have families said, during the week they stole the money to pay for the funeral.
It's happened like that.
Yes. Yeah. So people, let's be a people. Let's love one another again.
So this has been inspirational, it's been informational, it has been moving.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Keith C. Belgrove.
This is an enjoyment to be here and to share with you and the public in general, and Prime Minister, AG, Minister of Local Government. The profession, it's a trade at this point. The trade of funeral service needs your help. We cannot go into a profession and be world class to stand in this global atmosphere to take funeral service into world class without your help. We need regulations.
Keith C. Belgrove, thank you very much.